Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my quarterback start or sit decisions for week number 7 of the 2024 fantasy football season, going in depth through every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way up until the doubleheader on Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the quarterbacks in all of those games. It is important to note that there are two teams on bye this week, the Chicago Bears and the Dallas Cowboys, but before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 7 quarterback start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Denver Broncos at the New Orleans Saints. Now, in this matchup, I am not interested in playing any of the quarterbacks. Now, Bo Nix, I will give him a lot of credit. The guy has been a top 9 quarterback in back-to-back weeks, and honestly, he is definitely going to be a start-worthy quarterback next week up against the Carolina Panthers defense. Though, this week up against the Saints defense that is top 7 in terms of points allowed to quarterbacks weekly, I am very worried in this spot about Bo Nix. Now, due to his rushing upside, he is close to ranking as a low-end start, right? If you wanted to make some crazy argument that you would rather start Bo Nix over one of the other guys that have ranked as low-end starts, then go right ahead. But this defensive matchup does really concern me, so ultimately he will be a sit. Now, Spencer Rattler, Timu Patrick Mahomes, did solid in his NFL debut, considering his best wide receivers got hurt, and he was a 5th-round NFL draft pick. His rushing upside is solid as well. Now, I don't expect him to rush for as many yards as Bo Nix, but he's also not just some statue quarterback that stands there and can't have any mobility outside of that. And in better matchups, I would consider starting Spencer Rattler. But here against the Broncos defense, even without Patrick Surtain, I don't think you can trust Rattler with practice squad wide receivers out there. So I'm not interested in either the Broncos or the New Orleans Saints starting quarterbacks. Next up, we move to the New England Patriots at the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. Now, Drake May was a full participant in practice on Wednesday with a knee injury. Now, he did undergo a MRI after Wednesday's practice, but as of right now, we have no information on that, and based upon the fact that he did practice on Wednesday, I assume he is good to suit up in London, but that is something you are going to want to follow if you wanted to start him. Now, in his first ever NFL start, this man went balls to the wall. Quarterback 10 going 20 of 33 for 243 yards and 3 touchdowns with 2 picks and 5 rushes versus a very good Houston Texans defense. Now he is in a wet dream spot up against the Jacksonville Jaguars that allow the most amount of points to quarterbacks on a per game basis. I like Drake May as a high-end quarterback too, who is flirting with being ranked inside of the top 12. While the Jacksonville Jaguars have been a disaster, there is nothing to say really all that nice about the Jaguars as a whole. Now, the offense is definitely better than the defense, but the offense is also lacking. Trevor has, though, been a top 16 quarterback in 3 straight games, and while I am far from sitting here excited to play him, I think he is a fine quarterback too this week, especially since his weapons core is loaded. He is, though, the 2nd lowest ranked player that I have listed as a start. Next up, we move to the beginning of the real Sunday slate at 1 p.m. EST, the Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons. And Geno Smith has been a very reliable low-end quarterback 1 all season. I know that didn't end up coming to fruition last week up against the 49ers, but this is a guy who has been a top 9 quarterback in 4 of 6 games against a Falcons defense that can allow this game to be very back and forth, to allow Geno Smith to cook here. I think this is a game that has the makings of Geno potentially finishing inside of the top 5. And based upon the amount of safety that he has given our fantasy teams this season, I'm going to rank Geno as a low-end quarterback 1 yet again, with all of the weapons at his disposal. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett in my in my pocket, skirt, JSN, Kenneth Walker, Noah Fant. They have a lot of options out there. I expect yet another, at minimum, top 12 game. Kirk Thuggins was coming off of his best game of the season. And honestly, that was a performance where, up against the Buccaneers in prime time, Kirk Cousins had the best quarterback play of the season, not just for himself, but on the whole entire year. He was the quarterback number 1 with over 500 passing yards and 4 touchdowns with an INT, right? So he was on fire, NBA Jam style, and then he followed that up in a solid matchup up against the Panthers where the Falcons put belt to ass. He was just the quarterback number 23. Now, ultimately, now that the run game is actually working, I am kind of nervous that they're just going to jam the ball down the throat of the Seahawks defense, because the Seahawks defense is soft as baby shit up against the run. But I do believe that this game could be a higher scoring game, right? Not just a one-sided affair by the Atlanta Falcons. And I think Kirk should be in a similar range as Geno, but Kirk might actually fall outside of the top 12 in my quarterback rankings, but not too far. He would just be the quarterback 13. Next up, we move to the Les Titans at the no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Now, the trend for Josh Allen has been very easy to follow this season. The dude is either slinging dick as a top 5 quarterback, or he falls outside the top 18 and has a disaster class performance. Last week, up against the Jets was the prior, where he laid a pipe down like he was a plumber. 19 completions on 25 attempts in a surgical performance up against the Jets defense for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns, with 9 rushes for 18 yards and a touchdown. So 3 total touchdowns in that game and over 225 all-purpose yards. And to be honest with you, I was very nervous about Josh Allen entering into last week, so I was pleasantly surprised facing up against the Titans defense. I expect something very similar as what we saw last week, with him finishing as a top 5 quarterback. Now, for Will Levis, I would sooner commit a petty crime in Gotham near Batman over starting Will Levis in fantasy football. This man has played in 4 games that I will count. Now, technically, it's more because he played in that game up against the Dolphins, but he got hurt off the jump and they had to put in Mason Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. So we'll just erase that game. In 3 games, he finished outside of the top 21, and in 1 game, he was the quarterback 18. All of the positive that we saw last season, all of the flashes of greatness that we saw last season has just been zapped out of him. There is nowhere to be found. All of those fun plays, we don't see them anymore. And it's shocking because you would think with their new head coach that they got, that would have been a jolt of power into this offense, but it's been the opposite. And Will Levis is banged up with the shoulder injury, and the guy's a tough guy. I'll give him credit for that. Timu Josh Allen's going to go out there and try to play through it, but him playing through a shoulder injury is a recipe for disaster. Next up, we move to the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. And speaking of complete and utter disaster, I would rather let Tiger Woods swing his golf club at my ballsack over starting Deshaun Watson. I would rather let someone use their football cleats to step on my wang over playing Deshaun Watson. This motherfucker sucks so bad. Starting him would pain me more than anything. He is so bad. It is really that simple. He loses his number 1 weapon to the Buffalo Bills. Amari Cooper is now there. And if there ever was a bounce back narrative, right? I get it. The Bengals defense isn't very good. I get it. Without Amari Cooper, with this ragtag group out wide receiver, ain't no way I'm playing Deshaun Watson. Joe Burrow last week looked like prime Mike Vick running in a huge touchdown last week. And while that was one of the highest of highs early on in that game, it was the highest of highs because for Burrow owners, the motherfucker only found the end zone once in that game, and it was the big run in the Giants in MetLife in that matchup. So he was still the quarterback 13, so it was far from a disaster class, but he definitely did let us down. This week up against the Browns, again, that defense is straight up Fugazi. It's a Wazi, it's a Woozy. So I like him as a low-end top 10 quarterback type of play. Next up, we move to game numero 6, the Houston Texans at the Green Bay Packers, and this is one of my favorite games of the week. I am ecstatic to see the quarterback play out of both of these guys. We'll start off with the away team. C.J. Stroud, in my opinion, is one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Jen Selter, being one of the best quarterbacks doesn't actually mean that you're going to put up some of the most fantasy points at the quarterback position, and that is because of his limited upside and the fact that he's also missing Nico Collins. Now, him finishing as a top 5 quarterback because of that isn't super likely, but he is likely to be a very safe asset to throw into your lineup, right? He's going to finish anywhere from quarterback 8 to 16 every single week, and you're never really going to feel bad about starting him. He's never really going to take you straight to Pound Town, but he's also never really going to take your opponent there either. This week, I got him finishing in that quarterback 10 to 12 range, again, in a game that could be a shootout. Jordan, love me tender, love me sweet, has been nothing short of phenomenal this season. 3 of 4 games inside the top 12 and 2 of 4 games inside of the top 3. One of those top 3 performances was last week as he elbow dropped the Arizona Cardinals defense, going 22 of 32 for 258 yards and 4 touchdowns with 1 INT against the Texans defense. While they are solid, I still believe that Jordan Love is going to cook up a masterpiece in this matchup like his name was Wolfgang Puck as a top 5 quarterback on the week. Before we move on into the rest of the matchups, though, at the quarterback position, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're new to Underdog and sign up with promo code Notorious, you will receive your free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Tonight on Thursday Night Football, it will be Bo Nix higher than half of a total yard. You match that with one of the players on the Saints or any of the players playing on Sunday or Monday, and you will receive 3 times what you put into your pick'em. If you want to put in multiple other picks, then you'll receive a higher payout. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Nick, I'm watching this after Thursday Night Football. It's Friday, it's Saturday, it's Sunday morning. What happens if I use promo code Notorious now because Bo Nix already played? Well, you receive a similar pick to Bo Nix higher than half a total yard. It will just be a different player, and then you match that with any other player, and if both picks hit, you get 3 times your entry fee. So again, make sure you guys do sign up with promo code Notorious to get your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Next up, we move to the Miami Dolphins going up against the This Is Our Colts, this is our team, we bleed blue in Indianapolis. Now, Anthony Richardson practiced in full on Wednesday, and in my opinion, that probably means he is going to play. And Anthony Richardson is the definition of a glass cannon. If he can stay healthy, he has the upside to be the quarterback 1 in every single game, regardless of the matchup, if it is a matchup as soft as the tits of Sydney Sweeney, or if it is a matchup that is rock solid like myself when I see Sydney Sweeney, then it doesn't matter. It could be the hardest matchup, the easiest matchup, and Anthony Richardson could go over the top like Michael Jordan in fucking Space Jam when he yams it in from half court, right? He could have a huge game in any matchup. And this season, we've seen 1 huge performance and 2 disaster classes, and I'm not even going to count the game in Game 4 because he got hurt so early on in the game. The Dolphins actually allow the least amount of points to the quarterback position, which, while it is a real stat in terms of points per game, doesn't really mean diddly squat because I don't think the Dolphins defense as a Dolphins fan is really that great. So while Anthony Richardson is a bottom of the barrel start, he becomes a start because of the untapped upside here to where he could just put belt ass. He could go crazy in any spot. Tyler Huntley, realistically, I hope this should be his best game yet, as he's only been there for a cup of coffee a couple of weeks, and the bye week should allow him to get further integrated with the playbook and the offense as a whole. He linked up with Jalen Waddle and Jonnu Smith during the bye week to get some passing work in, so as a Dolphins fan, I hope he plays well. I hope the Dolphins can win, and I know Tua's coming back next week, and I hope that the team isn't dead on arrival by the time that Tua comes back, and they need to win this game. Does that mean they're going to win the game? Probably not, but I hope that they do. But in terms of fantasy, even up against a shit-stain Indianapolis Colts defense, there is zero need to start Tyler Huntley. Next up, we move to the Detroit Lions at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Now, Jared Goff has been hotter than Kate Upton in those vintage Sports Illustrated swimsuit editions from the 2012s, 2013s. I used to have those magazines back in the day. And actually, like, who the fuck had a magazine? You could just Google the picture. But back-to-back games as a top 4 quarterback. Though, what goes up, as they say, must come down. Especially up against one of the best defense, if not the best defense in the NFL. I am hesitant to go to bat here and state that Goff is anything outside of being a quarterback 2. The upside is always there in a loaded to the gills offense that the Lions have, but with so many touchdowns getting by the running backs, he is one of the lower end starts for me on the week, again, because of the matchup. Mono man Sam Darnold, outside of a tough spot against the Jets in London prior to the bye, Sam Darnold has been one of the more reliable quarterbacks in fantasy football. Sam has had 3 games inside of the top 10, and up against the Lions defense without Aiden Hutchinson, I expect him to tee off yet again. Darnold feels like a great bet to be a top 8 quarterback in what could be a high-scoring game if the Lions can crack that Vikings defense. Next up, we move to the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Football Giants. Now, for Jalen Hurts, with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown healthy, there is really not a single reason to rank Hurts outside of the top 5. I get that the Giants defense has been solid and they're definitely very underrated, but ultimately, I think the Eagles have the offense to overpower them here. The Eagles, in a shaky effort up against the Browns, not even a great performance from the Eagles offense, Hurts was still a top 8 quarterback, throwing for over 260 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as rushing for 33 yards. In the Saquon Barkley revenge game, I love Jalen Hurts as a locked and loaded top 5 quarterback. Last week for Daniel Jones, I was so excited to see what he could do up against a Bengals defense that can't stop a nosebleed. And instead of hitting them with a steel chair like their name was Seth Rollins, he proceeded to shit down his pant leg, finishing as the quarterback 22. Now, the upside is always there for Jones, as he has great rushing upside, Vanilla Vic himself, but up against the Eagles, the matchup isn't the best. It's not the worst either. And for other quarterbacks, we might be singing the praises here going up against the Eagles, but ultimately, he is one spot ranked outside of being a start-worthy guy because he's Daniel Jones, and it just does feel gross to throw that guy in your lineup. But getting back Malik Neighbors should be helpful. If you have both Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, you're like, Nick, I'd rather play Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson, right? Or, oh, I'd rather play Daniel Jones over this other guy that you have ranked low. I'm not going to argue with you too much. If we upped the category, the amount of players that are listed as starts, Daniel Jones was basically knocking on the door. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Los Angeles Rams in L.A., For the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell looks like Farva from the Super Troopers, and he plays like it too. The guy is a fine backup, but that's it. He is a 1 touchdown max type of guy, and even if he magically falls ass backwards into scoring 2 touchdowns against the garbage-ass Rams defense, he still won't be start-worthy. Clear sit. Not even going to spend a lot of time talking about AOC yapping here. Sit him, Matthew Stafford, outside of week number 1, Stafford hasn't been inside of the top 20 all season, and he has 2 games outside of the top 30. He's dealing with a minor back injury from carrying this franchise, and even in this amazing spot up against the Raiders, and even with Kupp potentially coming back, there are just too many other quarterbacks that you could start to even consider playing Matthew Stafford. Next up, we got the Carolina Panthers at the left. Hands up. Who are we? The Commanders. Now, Andy Dalton could potentially crack the top 18 here up against the Commanders as that defense, you can smell them through the screen. They reek to high heaven. But with that said, I have him ranked outside of the top 18 because, again, what is really the ceiling of Andy Dalton? Like, could he really, even in this game, be like a top 8 guy? I'm just not too sure about that. So I'm just not going to qualify him as a start-worthy quarterback. But again, he's another one of those guys like in the Daniel Jones range where he's kind of knocking on the door. Jaden Stormy Daniels has been a top 12 quarterback in 5 of 6 games this week up against the Panthers. I expect at minimum a top 5 game. The Panthers defense should have 0 answers for what Daniels, McLaurin, Luke McCaffrey, and friends, Zach Ertz, all those guys have for their defense. They really have nothing. They're not going to be able to stop them. Daniels could easily smash the 50-yard mark in terms of rushing, and as long as he continues to look sharp with his completion percentage, I don't think that there's even a realm of possibilities, knock on wood, that this ends up as a bad game. Plus, the Commanders' defense is so dick cheese that Dalton and the Panthers should be able to stay in the game enough to keep Daniels throwing the ball late. Next up, we got the Kansas City Chiefs at the San Francisco 49ers, the Super Bowl rematch. Mahomes is a start, but he is the least fun start at the quarterback position in fantasy football. Based upon where you have drafted him, he has absolutely fucked you right in the keister, and he is going to always finish as a top 18 quarterback, but it's very unlikely that he finishes inside of the top 10. Regardless of how great of a quarterback you think he is, he hasn't been good in fantasy, and to actually want to start him, sure, if you're quarterback 18, it's fine. But if you don't go inside like the top 10, the top 12, you're kind of pissed off they even started him. Now, in any given game, Mahomes is Mahomes. He could go crazy, but with him not having a single game inside of 20 or more fantasy points, and without Rashee Rice, without Hollywood Brown, I am just not excited to start him. He is just going to be ranked in the quarterback 14 to 18 range. Big Cock Brock slapped it on the Seahawks' butt before he put it in. 18 of 28 for 3 tugs, no picks, 255 plus yards as the quarterback 6 last week. While tons of people like to just rain on the parade of Brock Purdy because the rest of the team just carries him, but if the rest of the team carries him to a top 12 performance, I could care less as long as he gets the points. And I believe that is exactly what will happen on Sunday as I got him as a low-end quarterback 1. Next up, we move to, cause you waited all day for Sunday night, the Jumbo Jets at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, quarterback controversy in Pittsburgh? Despite the fact that the team's 4-2, despite the fact that Justin Fields has been a top 12 quarterback in 3 of his last 4 games, the team might lean with Russie here as the quarterback 1. And even if they don't, the fact that Tomlin has talked about potentially using a 2-quarterback system has me completely spooked off of Fields. Because even if Fields is the guy, now they could just magically throw fucking Russ in there if Fields starts messing up. So that's a big concern. The matchup is already concerning, so I wouldn't play Justin Fields anyways. But now that Russell Wilson could potentially get in there, no way, Jose. And I think it would be stupid for the Steelers to start Russ just because Fields has played well and because the Jets defense typically struggles with quarterbacks that are mobile. For example, Josh Allen. Aaron Rodgers for the Jumbo Jets was halfway cooking up against the Bills last week, but the offense definitely was pretty solid. Injecting Adams into this offense is very exciting for Rodgers' upside, but up against the Steelers' defense, I see no reason to risk things here. Next up, we move to the first of 2 Monday Night Football games, the Ravens at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Lamar Jackson, we talked about some other consistent quarterbacks. Lamar is the poster boy for consistent quarterback play in fantasy football. 6 games played, 6 straight games inside the top 12, and 4 of 6 games inside the top 6. This week up against the Bucs in what could be a rock'em sock'em, high-scoring back-and-forth affair here. I expect Lamar to have his first quarterback 1 overall finish on the season. Zay Flowers is really looking better this season in his sophomore season. And while the rest of the wide receivers are kind of a ragtag group and he uses a trio, a threesome at the tight end position, Lamar keeps getting it done, and he's had 40 or more rushing yards in every game this season. I love Lamar this week up against the Bucs. Baker, touchdown maker, another guy that is uber consistent, like wrapping a condom around your squad. Baker has been a top 7 quarterback in 5 of 6 games, and yet people still disrespect Baker Mayfield. If you look at rankings across the industry, people will be like, oh, even though this matchup is pretty good, I can't put Baker inside the top 7, the top 6, the top 5, because Baker is Baker. I can't do it. And they just fucking panic. They overthink things. The biggest thing about fantasy football is not overthinking things. We are now 6 games into the season for a lot of these players. We have a large sample size. Don't fucking overthink what we've seen, right? He was the quarterback 2 last week up against the Saints, in a game where he played like Saints legend Jameis Winston with over 300 passing yards, and Bucs legend Jameis Winston over 300 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 INTs, and 29 rushing yards. In this matchup, I got him inside of the top 6. Final game here, we got Justin Herbert versus the Arizona Cardinals. Chargers at Cardinals. Justin Herbert, the pervert, is unstartable. Flat out. I get another one of these guys. Nick Herbert's really good. I know he is. But the team wants to run the ball as much as possible. And that is evident by how he is finished at the quarterback position every single week. He has zilch games inside the top 20. And even in a spot here up against the Cardinals where we could see Justin Herbert kick the teeth in of the defense, right? Like what Tony Soprano did to that guy that was talking to Meadow, right? You could see that happening because of how good Herbert is. Bad Cardinals defense, right? Upside out the wazoo for Herbert. But they're just going to run. They're going to run a million times. So you can't start him. There is no argument that you can make to start him. Kyler Murray, K1, has been more up and down than my own mental state while I'm watching a Dolphins or a Mets game, right? It is just the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Last night, the Dodgers kicked the ever-living shit out of my Mets, and I felt just terrible. But we're getting him back today, hopefully. But game 1 on. This is his stats. Quarterback 15, then he's the quarterback 1, then the quarterback 17, then the quarterback 24, then the quarterback 5, then the 25. Quarterback 25. Up and down. The Chargers defense is one of the best against quarterbacks. So I got Kyler ranked outside the top 12. He's still good. He still has that upside, but probably no Maserati Marv. Not the best spot for Kyler, but he is start worthy. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys do hit that subscribe button down below if you are new. Whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. Make sure you guys do check out Underdog tonight. Get that Bo Nix higher than half of a total yard free pick, plus a first time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash using promo code Notorious. I love you guys all more than you will ever know. Make sure you check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. The tight end video is coming a little bit later. We'll be live tonight, and potentially the running back rankings could be out before Thursday Night Football. The schedule this week got really messed up because of some personal things. Nothing to worry about though, guys. I am fine. Everything's all good, but just figured I would mention that because people were worried that I wasn't going to upload or something. I always try my best to upload all the videos on time. We've been uploading every single day since August, I think. So yeah, we're going to keep on doing that. I love you guys more than you will ever know. Hope you guys have a great one. And as always, good boy.